Tina Wallace had spent many years working double shifts at a little neighborhood diner, barely earning enough to keep afloat, yet she never let fatigue rob her of her genuine kindness. One rainy night, as she was closing up, she noticed a fragile boy in a wheelchair, shivering by the curb. Without hesitation, she scooped him up, ushered him inside, offered him a warm meal, and made him feel secure. Unbeknownst to her, a wealthy man across the street was watching every move. That man, Julian Reed, was the boy's father, and her simple act of compassion was about to open opportunities she never dreamed possible as the rain hammered down relentlessly. The rain battered the pavement of Lexington Avenue, transforming the cracked sidewalk into a slick, uneven surface, while streetlights cast a weak glow on the rundown buildings that lined the road. It was well past 11 at night, and the diner should have been closing its doors, but Tina Wallace was never one to turn someone away when they needed help, especially when the world had already knocked them down. She was behind the counter, her dark skin glistening with sweat after a grueling 12-hour shift, when she spotted the small figure outside. There, in a battered wheelchair, sat a young boy with dark hair clinging to his forehead and wearing a threadbare coat that barely shielded him from the chill. He sat right under the flickering neon diner sign, clutching a worn blanket that did little to fend off the cold. With a frown, Tina set aside her cleaning rag, swung open the door, and greeted him gently. "Hey there, sweetie," as she knelt beside him. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy flinched, then raised his wide, uncertain blue eyes and mumbled, "I'm waiting for my dad." Tina scanned the street. There was no one in sight except for the dull light of a nearby pawnshop sign and the sound of tires gliding over wet asphalt. "Where's he?" she asked with genuine concern. The boy simply shrugged and pulled his blanket closer. With a soft sigh, Tina knew she couldn't let him remain out in that miserable weather. "Come on in," she said warmly. "It's warm inside, and I've got something special waiting for you." After a brief pause, the boy slowly nodded. Tina carefully grasped the wheelchair's handles and guided him into the diner, where a burst of warmth and the scent of freshly toasted bread and strong coffee immediately embraced them. She led him to a booth by the radiator, draping a clean towel over his shoulders before bending to meet his gaze. "I'm Tina," she said with a bright smile. "What's your name, sweetheart?" The boy sniffled and murmured, "Leo." Tina smiled approvingly. "That's a strong name. Are you hungry?" Leo nodded timidly, and without waiting for a reply, Tina made her way to the kitchen. She pulled out a fresh loaf of sourdough, slicing it with practiced ease, and soon returned with a steaming plate of golden, crispy grilled cheese paired with a bowl of tomato soup, the same comfort meal her grandmother used to make when nights were long and the world felt unkind. "Everything's on me tonight," she assured him as she tucked a napkin into his lap. Leo's eyes lit up as he took his first bite, the cheese stretching in long, gooey strings. "This is the best thing I've ever tasted," he whispered in awe. Tina laughed softly as she watched him devour the meal, saying, "Good food can make even the worst days a little better." Yet inside, she felt that familiar ache, the pain of witnessing a child so young already burdened by life's hardships. When she had seen too many kids left waiting for someone who would never come. What Tina didn't know was that across the street, a sleek black Bentley sat quietly in the shadows. Its tinted windows mirrored the neon glow from the diner, while inside, Julian Reed observed the unfolding scene with piercing gray eyes. At 46, Julian had built his empire on strict control and ruthless efficiency. His company, Reed Innovations, was the powerhouse behind the city's tech industry, a billion-dollar machine that valued precision over sentiment. For years, Julian had ensured that no distraction, be it emotion or weakness, could interfere with his operations. And now, he was watching, listening, and calculating as he realized that Leo was his son, and that the kind waitress in a worn-out apron was feeding him for free. Earlier that evening, Julian had been caught up on an urgent call with his investors. in Japan and had instructed Leo to wait at the diner for only a few minutes. He hadn't anticipated this scene. Picking up his phone, he quickly dialed his assistant, saying, "Lana, get to Lexington Diner. No suits, no heels. I need you there in 20 minutes. After a brief pause, he added, "Find out everything you can about the woman who just fed my son." And then he hung up, his voice controlled but his mind racing. Inside the diner, Leo was laughing for the first time that night, swinging his legs under the table while remnants of soup clung to his chin. Tina wiped them away with a napkin, shaking her head and teasing, "Messy eater, huh?" Outside, Julian's expression was unreadable as he watched, already calculating the cost of what he saw. He didn't believe in kindness, he believed in debts, and whether Tina realized it or not, she had just put him in hers. Tina wiped her hands on her apron and glanced toward the window as the rain continued to streak down in uneven trails. Leo was finishing the last of his sandwich, his little fingers now warm and steady, his face no longer etched with the weariness that no child should show. A swell of quiet satisfaction filled her. A simple moment of kindness was enough. Just then, the diner's door swung open, letting in a rush of cold air, followed by a woman in jeans and a hoodie, her blonde hair hidden beneath a faded cap. This new arrival looked out of place, not because of her clothes, but because of the way she carried herself sharply and calculatingly. Tina, who had been in the business long enough to spot someone who wasn't there just for the coffee, noticed the woman's gaze falling on Leo. Softening her expression, she knelt beside the boy. "Hey, champ, time to go," she said gently, though there was something too smooth and rehearsed in her tone. Leo frowned and wiped his mouth with the napkin Tina had given him. "But I haven't finished my milk," he protested. The woman, who Tina would later learn was named Lana, tilted her head with a practiced smile. "You can take it with you. Your ride's waiting." Tina's instincts flared. She had seen too many people simply dismiss someone without asking questions, but she always did. Folding her arms, she looked at the woman carefully. "Do you know him?" she asked. Lana's smile remained steady, though her shoulders tensed ever so slightly. "Yes," she replied smoothly. "I'm his aunt." Tina didn't miss a beat. Turning back to Leo, she said, "Is that true, sweetheart?" Leo hesitated just a moment too long, and Lana's jaw set tight. Tina had grown up knowing that hesitation could signal danger. She recognized the look of fear and the quiet power of those who knew exactly what they were doing, though her gut urged her to insist. On more answers, she knew from past experience that questioning someone like Lana too hard could bring unwanted trouble. So, she decided not to send Leo away empty-handed. She walked to the counter, grabbed a chocolate chip cookie wrapped in wax paper, and slid it into Leo's hand. "For the road," she said softly. Leo's small fingers curled around the treat, and for the first time that evening, he grinned. "Thanks, Tina. You're the best." Tina forced a smile, but her heart clenched as she watched Lana wheel Leo toward the door. The tension between them was thick. Just before stepping out into the rain, Lana glanced back, silently warning Tina of something amiss. Across the street, the Bentley's headlights flashed as Lana approached the rear door. Before she could even knock, Julian stepped out, his broad figure outlined by the neon sign. After ensuring Leo was safely buckled in the back seat, Julian turned to Lana. "Well?" he said. Lana exhaled, pushing back her hood. "She's sharp," she admitted. "I almost caught you out on that aunt story." Julian's face remained impassive, but Lana continued. "I didn't have a choice. You know how it goes. A black woman making a scene ends up being the one in trouble, not me," she added pointedly. Julian's jaw twitched, but he said nothing further. Lana folded her arms. "She's not like the others," she said, echoing what Julian already knew. At that moment, Tina stepped back into the rain without a second thought, the way she had spoken to Leo, making him feel important rather than an inconvenience. Julian watched silently, Noting that while many people would bend and manipulate for money, Tina had helped his son even without knowing who he was, and that made her dangerous. Opening the car door and sliding inside, his voice dropped low. "I want everything on her, name, address, background. I need it on my desk by morning." Lana hesitated a moment too long, and Julian's tone sharpened. "By morning." She exhaled and nodded in understanding. As the Bentley pulled away, the diner receded in the rearview mirror, but Julian wasn't thinking about the city lights or the traffic. His mind was on Tina Wallace and the debt he now owed her. That night, Tina trudged home with her sneakers soaked from the rain and a deep chill settling in her bones. The meager tips from the diner barely covered her rent, let alone groceries, yet the memory of Leo's grin warmed her heart. Still, something about the encounter nagged at her, a familiar unease she'd seen before in the forced, polished smile of a stranger and the hesitation in Leo's answer. Back in her one-bedroom apartment on West Fayette Street, where the heat barely worked and thin walls allowed neighbors' TV chatter to intrude, Tina leaned against the door and rubbed her face. She had always been careful not to meddle in things that weren't her business, but this situation felt different, felt wrong. Before she could settle her thoughts, a knock sounded at the door. It was unusual for anyone to visit at this hour. Peering through the peephole, her stomach churned when she saw a tall, broad-shouldered man dressed in an expensive black coat that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. His sharp features and cold gray eyes made it clear he had already judged her. Keeping her hand on the lock, she asked, "Who is it?" There was a pause before a deep, controlled voice replied, "Julian Reed." The name meant nothing to her. "What do you want?" she demanded. After another pause, she felt a shiver of instinct telling her not to open the door, yet curiosity prevailed. Slowly, she unlocked and opened the door just enough to see his face clearly. He didn't belong in her building or in her neighborhood. "I don't know you," she stated flatly. His expression remained unchanged. "But you know my son," he said softly. Tina's pulse quickened. "I was watching from across the street last night," he continued. The cold that had settled in her bones grew sharper. "So, are you here to complain that I fed your kid?" she asked. "No," Julian replied, his gaze unreadable. "I'm here because I don't believe in charity. I believe in settling debts." Without waiting for her answer, he pulled an envelope from his coat and placed it on her rickety kitchen table. Tina didn't move. Slowly, she eyed the envelope. Thick, expensive paper that carried a weight suggesting its contents were significant. "What is this?" she asked softly. "A job offer," Julian replied. Tina's mind went blank for a moment as she looked up. "A job offer?" Julian tilted his head as if almost disgusted by the idea of offering her employment at Reed Innovations. 6 figures, benefits, the whole package. Tina let out an incredulous laugh. "You think I want to work for some rich white man who believes that writing a check can settle everything?" she said. Julian didn't flinch. "I don't think you need charity," he said calmly. "That's why I'm not offering charity." His words stung. "You don't even know me," Tina countered. "I know enough," he stated steadily, his voice firm as he continued. "I know you fed my son without expecting anything in return. I know you treated him like he mattered. That's rare." Tina swallowed hard, ignoring the way his words unsettled her. She looked down at the heavy envelope on her table and asked, "What exactly would I be doing at Reed Innovations? Making coffee?" Julian's mouth twitched, a fleeting hint of amusement crossing his face before vanishing. "No, you'd be working directly with me, handling negotiations and public relations. You're great with people, and I need someone like you." Tina snorted. "You don't need me. You have a company full of Ivy League grads willing to do backstab work for a job like that." Julian's expression shifted slightly. "That's exactly why I don't trust them," he said. A heavy silence followed as Tina felt the weight of his offer pressing against her pride, exhaustion, and her stubborn refusal to be bought. But 6 figures meant no more late rent, no more living paycheck to paycheck, and no more nights wondering how she'd stretch her last $20. Her mother's voice echoed in her head, warning never to owe favors because nothing came without a price. Her jaw clenched. Why me? Julian fixed her with a steady gaze, and for the first time, something in his eyes softened slightly. Because you saw my son, he said in a low voice, as though it cost him something to admit. Not for my money, not for my name. You saw him. Tina's throat tightened. She looked at the envelope one last time, then slowly said, I'll think about it. Julian studied her for a long moment before giving a curt nod. Without another word, he turned and left. Tina stood there long after the door closed, the envelope feeling heavier than it should, already knowing that she wasn't just considering it. She was going to say yes. The first day at Reed Innovations felt like stepping into an entirely new world, a place where everything shone too brightly, where money smelled like polished marble and the air was thick with authority. Tina walked into the towering glass building dressed in a modest blazer and second-hand heels, acutely aware of every pair of eyes turning as she passed through the lobby. It wasn't the kind of attention she was used to. It wasn't out of curiosity. It was judgment, calculation. But she kept her head held high and her shoulders squared. She had learned long ago not to be underestimated. Inside a sleek office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Julian sat behind a pristine desk that looked more like a work of art than a tool of business. Without looking up, he gestured to a chair across from him. "You're late," he remarked. Tina raised an eyebrow and replied, "Just 2 minutes, sir." Julian's sharp gray eyes fixed on her. "That's 2 minutes I don't get back." Tina shook her head. She had barely been there for 5 seconds when he was already critiquing her. "Do you want me here or not?" he asked, leaning back and studying her. Before she could reply, the glass door opened and Lana entered, tablet in hand, her face an impassive mask. Tina couldn't help but notice the way Lana's gaze swept over her as if measuring whether she belonged in that world, a world that had already decided she did not. Lana spoke smoothly, "Welcome to Reed Innovations." Meeting her steady gaze, Tina forced a slow smile. "Oh, so, we're doing last names now. Nice to see you again, MZ Winters." For a brief moment, something flickered in Lana's eyes before she turned back to Julian. "I've prepared the reports for the upcoming negotiations with the Orion Group," she said, handing over her tablet without sparing Tina another glance. "Would you like me to brief her on the company protocols?" Julian didn't even look up. "No, I will." Tina wasn't sure if that was a good sign or a warning. Lana only nodded, and as she left, she hesitated at the door and glanced back at Tina, whispering, "Good luck." Tina tilted her head. The tone didn't sound encouraging. It sounded like a caution. There wasn't much time to ponder as Julian dived right into work. He pulled up a file and slid it across the table. "The Orion Group wants to push through a contract that would cut labor costs by outsourcing jobs overseas. That means layoffs, thousands of them." Tina skimmed the document, her stomach twisting at the thought. "And you want me to what? Convince them not to do it?" Julian's steady gaze didn't waver. "I want you to do what you do best, deal with people." Tina crossed her arms. "So let me get this straight. You brought me in because you think I can charm these billionaires into developing a conscience?" Julian's eyes remained fixed on her. "No," he replied coolly. "I brought you in because you understand something they don't." Tina narrowed her eyes. "And what is that?" Julian leaned forward a bit. "That people who have nothing to lose will fight the hardest." His words struck a chord deep within her, a truth unspoken yet undeniable. She stared at him for a long moment before shaking her head. "You really do talk in riddles for someone running a tech empire." A slight smile almost appeared on his lips, but it quickly vanished, and just like that, the moment passed. Meeting at noon, he said, standing up. Try not to be late. Tina rolled her eyes but didn't argue. She had a job to do. The conference room was cold, an expanse of steel and glass that seemed designed to make everyone uncomfortable. Tina took a seat beside Julian at a long mahogany table facing three men in tailored suits. They exuded the kind of confidence that came from knowing they could shape lives with a single signature. The head of the group, Philip Langford, 60 years old with slicked back white hair that reeked of old money and entitlement, barely acknowledged her presence. Tina had dealt with men like him before, the ones who only saw value in people who looked like them, but she kept her composure. Julian wasted no time. You want to move production to Taiwan, is that right? You say it'll cut costs and boost efficiency. He paused, then continued. I say it will destroy a workforce that has built this company's infrastructure for over a decade. Langford offered a slow, thin-lipped smile that never reached his eyes. You misunderstand, Julian. It's not personal. It's just business. Tina's fingers curled under the table. Not personal, she muttered under her breath. She'd heard that phrase too many times, from landlords hiking rent overnight when neighborhoods were gentrified, from her mother losing her job at a factory when cheaper labor was found overseas. Companies like these destroyed communities under the guise of strategy. It's always just business until it hits your doorstep, she said softly. Langford's eyes suddenly fixed on her, and Julian let Langford continue. Serena Carter. I mean Tina Wallace, Julian corrected himself in his mind, giving her a once-over, as if measuring her worth. Tina didn't care. She'd been underestimated before. Langford leaned back and waved a dismissive hand. Look, sweetheart, I get it. You think we're the villains here. But this is about numbers. It's about what makes sense. Tina's jaw set firmly as she leaned forward. All right, let's talk numbers. She slid a document across the table. This is a breakdown of what happens when you offshore production. Sure, you might save money initially, but in 3 years, when labor costs rise, your new manufacturing hub becomes a financial burden. You'll end up spending millions restructuring, rehiring, and handling PR disasters when headlines scream that American workers were betrayed for profit. She tapped the paper lightly. That isn't just guesswork, it's market analysis. Langford glanced at the file but didn't touch it. Tina's steady gaze never wavered. You can make the smart choice now, she said evenly, or you can explain to your investors why your short-term gains ended up costing them long-term returns. A heavy silence fell before Langford exhaled, picked up the document, and scanned it. Julian didn't smile, but Tina sensed a shift in the room. She had just turned the tide. Langford eventually set the paper down with an expression that remained unreadable. We'll revisit the proposal, Julian stated. See that you do. The meeting ended shortly afterward as Langford and his associates departed. Tina felt the weight of Julian's gaze on her. He finally said, I knew I hired you for a reason, Tina smirked. Damn right I did. Leo, who had been watching silently, glanced between them and asked, Are you guys going to hug or something? Julian sighed. Absolutely not. Tina rolled her eyes. God, no. Leo grinned widely, the first genuine smile in a long time, and Tina felt as if she had built something real, something that mattered. Yet she also knew her journey was far from over. A few years later, Tina Wallace sat in the executive office of Reed Innovations, her name now proudly engraved on the door as Vice President of Corporate Strategy. What had started as just a job, a challenge, had transformed into a mission. Under her leadership, the company had expanded its ethical labor practices, launched mentorship programs, and forged partnerships with minority-owned businesses throughout the city. A new community center, named the Wallace Reed Foundation, had been established to fund education and job opportunities for underprivileged youth. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Leo, now a college freshman, stood beside her, grinning like the kid who once received a free meal in a diner simply because someone cared. And in that moment, everyone knew that the kind of investment made from genuine kindness was always the most rewarding of all.